Let me know when you're ready and I'll start the recording thing.
Well, let's go ahead and get started. Yeah.
Okay, we're going.
All right, I'd like to officially call the meeting to order. And we'll start with our introductions. Adam.
My name is Adam Baikowski, Oregon City resident and manager of First City Cycles.
Brian Watt.
I'm Lisa Norman.
Bob Burns.
Excellent. All right, next we have the approval of the minutes. So has everyone had a chance to review them?
And of course, these are way back from March because of
We
the
haven't had
last
many.
couple meetings being canceled there. So.
I move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. No opposed, I'm guessing. So those are approved as written. And next we have citizen comments. Joyce.
Yep, Joyce. Joyce Gifford.
Well, welcome, Joyce.
Thank you very much. Last month I came to the meeting and unfortunately there was not a quorum, but had a discussion regarding this issue that I'd like to bring up. And again, my name is Joyce Gifford and I'm a resident of Oregon City. From our house at the end of the street, we can see the back end of the cemetery. And I know that at one point the cemetery had put in an application to build a washing station at that location. And it was brought to our neighborhood association and the Berkeley Hills Neighborhood Association because it was kind of right there on the border. And there were some concerns that we had about that wash station. And then the next thing we knew, the application had been pulled and they weren't going to be doing it or something. But yet work continued on the wash station. So we took a walk over that direction to see what was going on. It was obviously a new pad was being built, new water pump things with heavy-duty sprayers for washing off vehicles and things. And at the last non-meeting, had a chance to talk to Larry Potter about what was going on, and he said it was really an upgrade to a previous kind of gravel area that they'd washed their mowers off with and stuff, and so that this was going to be an upgrade. And he assured us that there would be no chemicals used. It was just to wash the grass and the dirt and things off the equipment. Of course, as you know, there's always, when you wash your lawnmower, there's going to be a little oil and stuff too. But he also said at the time that the water would be used, the runoff water would be used to water the lawns. Well, it appears that what he meant by watering the lawns is that instead of the water just flowing down into the canyon like it had before, this new location, the water is more in a grassy knoll, and so it's just going to, again, run off this concrete pad and water the grassy knoll. There's no catchment for the water, so it's really not watering the lawns of the cemetery. So just kind of wanted to know if the committee was aware of what was going on with that wash station, or am I misinformed? Is there really a catchment that they're that they're catching this water in, and they're going to use it to water some of the lawns? I don't know if you know, Scott.
A little bit. I can give you a quick what I know, but I think we'll probably have to have Larry give us a full report at the next meeting. To my knowledge, we're not putting in a catch basin or a tank or anything. I assume what Larry, and I wasn't in that conversation, so I don't want to make any assumptions about what Larry was referring to, but I think probably just the runoff water as far as using, or that washing. And what I can tell you is that we're working with our Public Works Department on some better plan down the road. What she's talking about is where we wash some of our. It's a rinse off station for the equipment, and we're trying to come up with a better plan to do that in a more environmentally friendly way. Working with our Public Works Department to do something potentially jointly or something like that. So we've got some discussions going as to how to do that better, but I don't have any specific details about that right now. So
Just as a concerned neighbor, I don't want oils and things.
sure,
getting
I can
washed.
appreciate that, definitely. So if the committee's interested in this, we can, like I said, we can have I can ask Larry to give a more comprehensive report and probably have some updated information by the next meeting.
I think think that would be great. Joyce, thank you for bringing that concern. And I think that, yes, we would like a follow-up on that from Larry, maybe at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Joyce.
All right, next on our agenda is general business. And this is Scott's area.
Well, the first item is the RV Park Master Plan process update. And just as a quick background, and then I'll introduce a couple of our guests here to give you some information tonight. As you know, this has been a topic of interest, well, for the Parks and Rec Committee, probably going back for quite a number of years. I think Sean could attest to that because he was on the committee before when we were trying to get something going on the RV park. So, as you know, we've been reporting to you that we've been in the process of working on an update, and then this spring, I guess, we hired we did a selection process, and hired a consultant team to do the master plan design for the city. We've been working on that. We've done a field trip to a state park with an RV park. We've been working on some preliminary design stuff, and with us tonight is our design team. We've got Kelly Grover. Kelly's our lead on the project, and her firm is Furwood Design Group. That's the firm that we reported to you that we had hired. And also working with Kelly is a landscape architect, Mary Zarkin. And what I'd like to do is ask Kelly and Mary Ann to come up. They've got some stuff to put up on the presentation. You can watch it on your screens, and we're just going to walk through an update on where we're at. Talk about the preliminary concepts that we've got to this point. And then this is your opportunity to ask questions or to bring up any concerns you have. We're getting quite a ways down the road. We're getting pretty close to, I think, a final design. And what we'd like to do is make sure that Parks and Rec Committee is on board with this. If you have any concerns, this is the time to express them. If you have questions and anything about the design stuff and that type of thing, this is your chance to do so. And unfortunately, our representative to the process from the Parks Committee, Don, has resigned. He was pretty close to what we were doing. So, but I know that everybody's interested in this, and I know that we've been bringing you information. So, with that, I'd like to invite Kelly and Mary Ann to come on up and give you some info about the project. I'll turn the lights down for you a little bit here. Oh, at your places, I put some hard copies of the plans. You should see those.
So we'll have those on the presentation as well. So, but sometimes it's easier to see the fine print on the hard copies. So my name is Kelly Grover, principal engineer at Furwood Design Group. This is Mary Ann Zarkin, and we're going to go through kind of how we came about where we are today with the design, and I'm sure you are familiar with the existing RV park. And after our visit to Stub Stewart, there were some features there that we kind of took away as elements that would definitely enhance this RV park. And as I'm sure the committee is aware, one of the goals in improving the RV park is to also increase the usership for the RV park. And so at Stub Stewart, it was one of the takeaways was having a feeling of privacy, kind of an enclosed space, and also they had relatively large RV pads. Speaking
Yeah,
of
if
my,
you can
I saw
speak
that
it. Yeah,
cue
thanks.
over there.
Got it.
So, taking those into consideration, also turning movements for the larger RVs. That was another design goal, is catering to the larger RVs. And the main unique thing about this particular site that is factored into the design is it falls within the floodplain. So we have planning code as well as state and federal codes to comply with in terms of putting together a design. So we went through a few different layout scenarios, presented 3 layouts to Larry. Some of them were very similar in what the existing RV has with the 3 aisles and the angular parking. And really, some of those layouts were not much different than what is existing. So we came up with a 3rd layout, which Larry and everybody kind of really honed in on and liked. And that's this layout. And I know I'm going to use this pointer, but this screen is to your back, so I'm not sure how much you will see. But
Does the Kelly? Does the mouse show up on your screen? Because if it does, maybe not. Yeah, it
Yeah,
does. Yeah,
there we go.
So that will show up on their
Okay.
screen if you want to use that.
okay, it
Perfect.
was hiding. So I'll just quickly kind of point out some of the features of this particular layout. One being obvious that we have a nice large turning radius. We have some great interior space that will afford some nice landscaping. We have overflow parking, 4 spaces here and 3 spaces here. We've actually expanded the parking from the existing footprint a little bit further in the southerly direction. This actually, the current RV park, the gravel area kind of stops right here, and this is where the existing dumpster is, right there. One of the reasons we did that is we felt that this natural green and open space really afforded a nice view for parking pads and could also lend to that privacy feeling with some additional landscaping. These 2 are intended to be the park host spaces, and we're pretty confident that we can get sanitary sewer to those 2 spaces so that they will have permanent hookups. And another feature is this: we kind of came up with this idea at the Stubbs Stewart. It was having a community fire pit, and that's kind of in this area here. And the trash enclosure will be moving. Where did my mouse go? There it is. From here to an area right here. Most of these spaces are 50 feet in length by 20 feet wide. 15 feet wide, and then the spaces between are 20 feet wide. Some of them are smaller. This is 35 feet because it's on the corner. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Marianne, who's going to talk a little bit about the landscaping features.
Okay, now we get to look at the pretty picture. Is this on? Okay. One of the things that we saw originally when we started looking at the site was the riparian edge of the river. And in particular, does this switch out more? Okay, here we go. Working. It's unplugged.
Well, that's
I think this needs to be a little longer. Just, yeah, it's a little constrained. Very good. Okay. Currently, there's vehicular access along the riverbank. I don't know how far to the south it goes here, but we have discussed terminating that so that vehicles would have to head up to the north, and that this area would all be able to be restored, and we could put in native plantings. And that would be both looked at favorably by agencies, but also make visitors to the park really, I think it'll make the experience of being in the RV park much nicer. As we have shown here also, we wanted to create a visual buffer or screen from the campground to the roadways that are nearby. And you can see also I-205 off in the distance, kind of create more of a sense of enclosure, or to create a sense of place so that you feel like you're at a place. And so we're really using the plant materials and a variety of plant materials to help reinforce that. We want to create both within the campground a feeling of enclosure, but also when you're in your own camp spot, that you have a feeling of you have a place to yourself. Not that it's impenetrable, but there's a feeling of enclosure there with the plant material. Each camp spot will have a hookup and a picnic table, and the pad that is on will be crushed rock. The paving here will be asphalt, but these pads here, this lighter gray, will be crushed rock surfacing, and that is an ADA accessible surface. As Kelly mentioned, we're putting in a fire pit down here with a seat wall as a place to have a sense of community. I've talked to people who go RV camping, and it's a social group. This provides a space for everyone to hang out. And if you're not lucky enough to have a camp spot on the edge of the river, you still get to share in that view of the river. So just to explain the legend a little bit, what we have here is we've got different types of trees and shrubs and ground covers based on where they are in terms of the water. Some areas are going to be inundated during the year potentially, and other areas are not. So we have to select plant materials that are going to thrive in those different environments. So if you look here, I've got lots of different shades of green. So the first shade of green, which are trees that would be in this riparian corridor and in parts of the campground that have traditionally flooded. And here's some suggested tree species. I won't read them all, but Oregon ash, red alder, those are native trees. Pacific willow, those are all natives. The swamp oak and the black gum are not native trees. They might be possibly put into the campground area. They can be inundated. They have beautiful fall color and would do really well in this scenario. Trees in the upland areas, those are trees that are outside of a zone that would get flooded. I've got trees such as forest green oak. I have big leaf maple on there, but I got the message from Larry he wasn't keen on those. There's several trees that Larry didn't want, and rightly so. Cottonwoods are not on here, but they're often found in this kind of a place. So we're definitely looking at maintenance and safety issues in selecting the plant materials. We want to pick trees that are going to get established easily and are easy to maintain in the long run, aren't going to break in windstorms, and aren't going to fall on anybody, can be established quickly, and then over the course of a few years not need to be watered in the summer. As Kelly mentioned, we have this larger planting area in the middle, and I really liked this scheme because it gives us the ability to put more trees in the back, so we can have shade in the summer, and once again reinforce this feeling of space. We can put in some conifers. Western red cedar will grow in the upland areas. It also could be on the edges of areas that could be inundated. Then I've got shrubs and ground covers that would be in the campground. If you've gone to any campgrounds on the coast, you recognize a lot of these things like salal. These are all natives. Red flowering currant, and then we've got salmonberry, twinberry, and willow. Those are all natives. And then some non-natives like strawberry tree and wax myrtle. And then I'll move over here to the riparian corridor. we've got these two categories here. So I wanted to preserve the views to the river for people walking on the pathway or people in these camp spots here. So I wanted to start out with lower things, and then this drops off rather quickly, so we can put in a little bit taller plant material in this this lighter green color. So the taller things: red twig dogwood, which we see all over, the Douglas spirea, salmonberry, and then in this lower area, I've got rushes and sedges, which are just look like grasses. So lower things and a dwarf red twig dogwood. I think that is explaining everything. I think one thing we didn't mention, I don't think, was that there's a new kiosk being developed here. I think that's being built by high school students.
Correct.
And that, I think that is under construction now.
Yep.
So we have that here. And at that, I will open it up to questions.
Thank you.
Well, before we do that, and I may have missed this, Kelly, did you mention about the number of spaces changed?
No,
difference?
I was going to. Thank you.
Well, just and you
Go ahead.
can expound on this, but we are losing a few spaces. I don't recall what the number is, but I think what we're, because of the adding the quality, we're losing a little bit of quantity. And if you want to expound on any of that, or I can't remember the exact number, Kelly.
Right now we have 25 spaces. Yeah.
And our current
And
number is 31, 2?
Or 33
Okay.
or something.
So we are losing some spaces. I want to point that out, but I think we're looking at what we're gaining in the quality. Is probably worth the quantity. It's rare that we would have a completely full lot at this point in time. And then as far as the revenue component of that, as we've talked about all along, what we're looking at is as we develop this and have a more attractive site, we're certainly going to look at what we can do with our revenues and increasing the per site charges. So I think even though we're losing spaces, we're not going to go backwards. In fact, I think we're going to go very much forward in our revenue capabilities.
Which one of these are the ones that is the leading contender? I see two different plans, and unless I missed something in your presentation.
They're actually the same layout. One just shows more of the dimensional features of the site, and one has more of the landscaping with the...
These are the same?
Correct, yeah. I think they're only, on the landscape plan, there's a little connectivity trail between the site pit and the path there that was added in. But yeah. You're not
I
seeing
must
that?
be losing my eyesight.
Maybe one different feature that is not noticeable, it's on the landscaping plan that might be kind of throwing you off, are the crusher fine area, the gray area that's on the landscape plan with the picnic table. That's not shown on the dimension plan.
I'm not with you.
Okay.
Just go back to this.
Yeah.
You're telling me this is the same as this?
Yeah.
The layout is.
Yeah, it's the same layout, and this is, I basically took Kelly's drawing and created basically a landscape concept. This was done so that the conversation could be started with planning and other agencies, so they could kind of see what we were thinking about in terms of plant materials to get the riparian corridor and other things planted.
So some of the, just to maybe walk you through, so where'd my mouse go?
Well, I see two
Okay, so here's,
long corridors in this one. I see 1, 2, 3 on the other one, but that's okay. I'll live with it.
so this is the overflow parking on the landscape plan, which is right here. And you're,
Okay, where's this on this one?
Oh, I see. So this
I
is
see
the
what he's
road
saying.
that goes around this. And the middle.
Where
these are the
where are
slopes,
these
right.
on this one?
so
They're right here. These are the
It's just the way that it looks. Yeah, the one,
it's the gray is just.
the first one, the not landscape plan looks.
it's just
It looks-
The middle looks
that's-
like it's an open driveway, possibly, versus
I see what you're saying.
when you put the landscaping on it, you get the concept.
Okay.
Well, I guess my question, if I may, is the effect of the maintenance on our department. I hate to bring that up, but I know you've been working with Larry. But is the host for the park going to be doing any of the maintenance on the site, or will that all be done by the Larry's department?
The park hosts do some of the maintenance. They do, I guess what we call minor maintenance, picking up trash, and they can do more than that. Right now, it's other than basically just kind of attending to the folks and picking up garbage and emptying garbages and some other things. There's really not any landscaping to speak of for them to deal with. Our park hosts at other parks where we have actual landscaping, they do some minor maintenance. They'll take some of the debris. They'll clean some. They'll do some minor landscaping as well. So the impact, and I think we're and you two can comment on this. We're really looking at a low maintenance plan, even though it looks good and it's a very much of an improvement in the landscaping. But we're really looking at low level maintenance type of stuff.
And
you guys can expound on that.
Yeah, and one of our next steps is we're actually meeting with Larry and his crew, maintenance crew, to get their input on the particular species, because they're, based on Larry's input, they have certain trees and shrubs, that they find easier to maintain than others, and so that's kind of our next step, is to meet with them, get their input on the particular vegetation preferences, along with the restrictions, because we do have to be relative native plantings because we are in the floodplain area. So with those considerations, maintenance is definitely one of the key
It's a big concern,
considerations.
Well,
Definitely.
we appreciate that question
Yeah.
because I understand where you're coming from with that, and that's very
Yeah.
appreciated. So.
And all the plant material that we that have been recommended and that we'll end up using are things that don't need to be pruned, or things are just going to grow and kind of create. It's going to be a natural look. It's not going to be manicured at all. There's no lawn in this area. It's going to be native things that once we're done irrigating it for a couple of years, then it's going to be on its own.
Great.
So it'd be really like if you go to a campground down at the beach, and you look at those plantings between parking spaces there, or the camp spots. They use a lot of salal, a lot of sedges and rushes, and other like twinberry, a lot of those native shrubs, and they just kind of create like a mass. And so that's kind of where we're headed on that.
Barrier between. Thank you. Are there any other questions?
I have another question. I think I figured out the maps here. Is there anything that can be done about the floodplain and the every 10-year floods we have down there? Or do we just go in after the flood and clean it up and start over?
Yeah, unfortunately, without major endeavors to, and probably maybe not even permittable, to alter the floodplain in the area, is to avoid it flooding, and putting in some sort of seawall or something of that nature is not going to fly with the agencies.
Yeah. So we, and I wish we could stop the flooding every, however often it happens, but we're doing this with that consideration in mind, that it has to be floodable and it has to be repairable with minimal cost every time it floods. We deal with that at Clackamat Park when it goes underwater. The planting, the turf and the plantings and the structures at Clackamat are resilient. Usually we don't lose structures and we lose minimal plantings, and we're doing this design with the same type of thing in mind. And we have, as they've mentioned, the regulatory agencies, the planning agencies will have some requirements about what we can and cannot do in the floodplain based on that very issue, and concerns about what would go into the water if it floods. And so we want it to be as floodable as possible, and we're moving ahead with it. I mean, there's no guarantee. If we get the really, really big one like the 90, 96, 97 one, there's probably going to be some damage, but most of the years we get those, the water comes up and we end up closing the park for a few days, maybe once or twice a year, and the water recedes and we have a little bit of cleanup, and it's not a big deal. It's just something we live with. Yeah. it's one of the, it's great to be on the water and have such a unique spot, but that's one of the drawbacks of being on the water is you get that issue. So.
Yeah, I got a question. You said that you hoped that the park host spots could be a permanent hookup. What are the constraints or the barriers to that? I see about a 5-foot change in elevation up to those spots, at least how I read your drawing there.
Yeah, no.
Does that 5 feet make the difference? Is it far enough out of the?
Yeah, because you figure your sewer line itself is generally buried 3 feet, so you're only dealing with 2 feet in essence, and then whatever, I can't remember the exact distance, but with minimal slope, it looks like we can actually have those 2 spots with permanent hookups. Yeah.
Is there any specific thing we have to make sure of to make sure that we're in regulation?
We'll have to go
permanent
before
hookup?
the engineering department, and it hasn't gone through that. We haven't quite gone that far in the process yet, but I'm sure they're going to require some sort of valve stops for floods conditions.
I missed the first part of your question because I was
Just-
talking to Sean over here for a second. So about just
Well, I mean, there's about 5 foot of difference, at least the way I read the chart here on where the RV park starts, and then up to those 2 spots that are the park host spots. And my question was, we hope to make those permanent hookup spots, and what would prevent that? I mean, we've got 5 feet of elevation change. Is that enough? And are we still looking into whether or not we can do it, or can we do it, or?
Yeah, I think we're still trying to make sure we can do that. Or
I'm 99% confident it's doable gravity-wise, but we still have to go through the engineering department to see if they'll permit it. So
yeah.
I have another question. That this might be not for you to answer, but do you know who owns the lot across, just above?
one,
There's a for sale sign on a lot there.
the city does.
The city's urban renewal agency owns that, so it's technically it's been sort of assumed that was kind of a park property, and we've used it as an overflow parking area, but it is owned by the urban renewal agency, which is the development arm of the city, and at the direction of the urban renewal commission and the city commission, the city has put up for sale a few of those properties, including that one, for potential economic development purposes. So we'll see what happens there. And if that does sell and go away, we're going to have some parking impact because we're going to lose some parking spaces. And that's something we're going to have to, we're already thinking about it.
It would be too bad to lose that property right next to the park here.
Okay. On back to the landscape concept. On this edge over here, where does the rock start? Because I know that that whole bank is just rocks. I mean, are some of these trees being planted within that area?
Yes, and there are some existing trees there now that are shown. You can't really see them on here. There's a couple trees down here. I mostly showed trees in association where there were existing trees. But yeah, and actually we were just discussing that. How were we actually going to plant this stuff on that really rocky slope? And I think that's something that we're going to be exploring over the coming months. But I mean, we've discussed how we're going to keep how we're going to do the plantings and keep things down by using erosion control netting after things are installed. But I think that's an excellent question. How we are, because
Yeah,
I don't know how rocky. It's pretty rocky.
Pretty sure it's all sand underneath the rock.
Right.
If there is any sand, there might be a lot more rock than I know of.
But that's one reason we're also using native material, because they grow naturally within the riparian area, and so it will be a matter of how much of that rock will we be potentially scraping off and replacing, or just digging little potting holes, or kind of the methodology there.
Okay, thank you.
Lisa, one of our audience members, Sean Datchler, has a comment or a question you'd like to ask?
Great, Sean.
I couldn't
So
wait till
good to
next
see
month.
you.
I served on this committee for 6 years and was a huge advocate for starting this years ago, starting this conversation because it brings back. It's the only thing in the system that actually is revenue positive. And so I thought if we're taking all this money, why not reward this place with it rather than it looking like an eyesore? I've owned RVs for years, and I see one pet peeve in this for sitting in or beside an RV, and that's in that center section. There's no divider between the left side and the right side. And an example I'll give you is Beverly Beach State Park has 2 different loops with problems like this, and they handle them completely differently. So maybe to give you an option. But one is a split rail fence right up the middle, because I don't really like a kid from the other campsite running over to mine, and my kid might be well-mannered, but their kids aren't. And you get a lot of that. And something cheap like a split rail fence will discourage that. Another loop at Beverly Beach State Park also uses about a 5 to 6 foot hedge of some sort through the middle. So just something to consider. Scott mentioned that, bring up your concerns now, and that would be something as a camper that would bother me. And the other part, when you were talking about the trees down in the floodplain, or what I call the major floodplain, it floods every year, is before we put money in trees down there, we need to make sure that they're going to survive the floods. I know in the McLaughlin project they're working on right now, they can't even shovel dirt out of one area without replacing it in another because of the floodplain. I'm sure you know that, but that's definitely a concern. So well done, though. It looks great.
Thank you. And other concerns too are beaver.
Right.
We will be making sure that those are beaver proof, hopefully.
Beaver-proof, yes. Beaver resistant.
Yes.
Another audience member with a question here. When you were first going over this one, and I see on the key there too, talking about where the crushed gravel rock is, but then when you explained it, you said just the main road was going to be paved and that the entire pad was going to be crushed gravel, or are the pads where they're going to park, are they paved and just the place where the picnic table and the hookups are, and that's the crushed gravel?
The latter, yeah. And so the actual pads will be paved.
They'll be paved.
And then this little square area here, that's the little picnic table, that is the Crusher Finds area. And that's a 12 foot by 25 feet generally space.
Okay. Thank you.
Does that clarify it?
Just-
Well, that makes me think of one more question. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Because it's almost 7:45 and we gotta get out of here. So no, I'm just kidding. I can see how fast pavement breaks up just through the rain in the rainy season here. So how much more base layer? I'm not in construction, so don't. This is not a loaded question. But I mean, are we talking about an increased level of base layer or something so that the first flood we don't have a complete disastrous mess in our hands and the asphalt's just heaving and everything?
Yeah. Ideally, if funding was not an object, we'd have it concrete, because that definitely endures flooding a little bit more. However, asphalt is the base right now. It has, according to Larry, we haven't done any test pits, but it has a significant amount of rock there right now, just from over the years. So it has a lot of rock right now. Typically, the base is primarily, you're dealing with loading considerations and not necessarily water considerations. So that is the asphalt itself. So I think just the nature of asphalt material, you're probably going to see over time some of the typical gator cracks and stuff that you see in asphalt because of that will be a maintenance issue, doing crack sealing or overlays or however. So
Yeah, that's a good point too about the cost. I mean, part of the whole thing, and I know I've talked to the committee about this a lot, is what we're doing here is we're creating a vision so that we can go out and figure out how to build it and go after maybe some grants or some other ways to fund this. That's the biggie. We're going to create the vision, have a nice plan, because you really can't go out and try to get funding for something that you don't have a complete and clear vision for. And things like what you just talked about, maybe considering concrete versus the asphalt or some things like that. we're going to have the vision, and some of those details we could upgrade if we had, more funding available once we go to build it, or some things like that. So that's something to keep in mind, is what we're creating is a master plan. It's the high level view. I mean, we're going to get into like planting plans and things like that, but we can make some adjustments, and certainly we can upgrade if, as we're going along, if we fall into a pile of money for this project somehow. So.
Okay,
But
well, we'll look for that.
because that's
file.
a really good question, and that is a good consideration about the the funding.
Just
That was a
something we
good
need to
comment.
think about, yeah.
Any more questions? All right, I think we're good. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Good job.
Nice, it's a beautiful
Thanks.
plan.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Would you mind just closing the screen on that for me, and then it'll just drop that out? Thanks.
Turn this off over here.
Yep. Just push that one on. In your back. We're on prac vacancies. All right.
Ooh, yes.
Oh, bright lights. Kind of liked it the other way. Thank you. All right, the next thing on our agenda is our prac vacancies, which we currently have 3 of them. And I'm wondering if we would like to entertain any conversation around making a recommendation to the commission.
Well, we interviewed a couple candidates a couple of months ago, or actually last month. And we didn't have that meeting. We had the interview process, and I happened to be one of the folks that were in that room, and we wanted to recommend both Sean Dashler and John Benjamin to the committee, to you guys. So that would be something I'd like to move that we could vote on. Make sure those guys get their mayoral appointment.
Appointment?
Yeah,
Is that your, is that a motion then?
it's a motion.
Is there a second?
A second.
In favor? All right, so we're ready to recommend for those 2 positions. And those would be the, for the term, I'm assuming, because
Yeah.
we didn't specify that, for the expiring on 12/31/15.
Thanks for that
Mhm.
clarification. Yeah.
And then do we want to discuss the last one, or do we want to have a?
Well, is the mayor here? We could just have him sign something for Sean right away, and he can just come over
Just
to
come
that.
up and step up? Well, I'm sure you'll be appointed, and I'm very excited to see you again, Sean. So it'll be nice to have you back on this over here. Good things come back, don't they?
Mhm. That's right.
Love it.
Yeah,
All
yeah.
right. Do we want to wait until next month about the 3rd position?
Were there any other candidates or any other resumes that are starting to percolate up?
No.
Or
Not that I've seen yet. Not that I've heard or seen.
yeah, if you want, I mean, I would.
Shall we go ahead?
Sure.
All right. Is there any conversation, or shall we make a request to the commission for an appointment of that other position, the 3rd position, which is Don Smith's recently vacated position, which expires, the term ends 12/31/14, and we had 1 applicant, which was Joyce Gifford. Is there a motion?
I move we recommend Joyce Gifford to the position that's held by Don.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. So we can make our 3
Very good.
recommendations. Thank you.
So I'll pass those recommendations forward, and as you know, it has to go to the mayor and then get put on the next available city commission meeting for a formal appointment. Which there's no meeting on the first part of July. The commission is taking that one off because it's the day before the 4th, and they decided to hold over, and they're going to meet whatever the second meeting, the 3rd Wednesday in July. So that would be before your July meeting. So what I'm telling you is I would expect the appointments to be made before your next meeting.
Excellent. That would be great. Thank you. All right. How about our Parks Day event? Let's have a little discussion about that. I have to admit that we need to have a discussion about that, especially since Don is not with us anymore. And I did send him an email to find out to what level he'll be able to participate in that event, and to get the big piece that we worked on at Eastham one day. So Any concerns or updates or from anybody?
Well, I definitely, and I'll try to contact Don too, not to belabor that point, but I think he'd be, not, if you're listening, Don, I think it would be great if he could still, because Don is full of energy and ideas
Oh,
and
yeah.
just,
It's great.
he's, he leads well and so we need, well, I'd like to have him there, but, so we need to go after him. So let's all call him
Okay.
and encourage him. to
So I
do
think it will hinge a little bit because we are counting on him for food and
Mhm.
participation in that. So we probably need to make a decision if we're going to be able to move forward. We're kind of getting down to the crunch time. We have-
Lisa, I've been thinking about this. You might remember I was talking about being an athletic director years ago, and people came in with great ideas. They all sounded wonderful. As time got close, my workforce would continually get smaller and smaller. I had those notions again the other day, thinking about the dates coming upon us, and we had a short 3 vacancies. I guess they're pretty much going to be filled in the near future. I'd hate to have us come together on August 10th and look around and have 2 or 3 or 4 people trying to pull this thing off. So,
Well, I
I,
agree
uh,
with you, Bob. And I think that even if worst case scenario, if we are not able to do the event, we can still do the tent and the information booth at the farmers market and down at the event at the end of the Oregon Trail. So I think worst case scenario, we can still get some information out there.
and then to continue with my concern, driving by the Riverview, Riverside,
Crest.
Rivercrest Park. I've lived there for 30 years or so.
Riverview.
My daughter works at Riverview Bank, and anyway, I get confused easily. I still see a lot of construction going on, and construction fences and 2 porta potties sitting out there. And I think, boy, I sure hope that doesn't look that way in 5 or 6 weeks from now.
It's not gonna. Yeah, it's gonna be done pretty soon. Actually.
I hope that's correct. Those porta potties have been there for a long time, and I know you said, Scott, the bathrooms wouldn't be ready. And if we have 200 or 300 people with 2 ugly porta potties sitting out there, that's not a good. That's not good. So I
Did
just
we-
wanted to.
Did we
mention
make that conclusion that the bathrooms would not be ready?
Yeah, if I was going to give you this report under my staff report thing at the end, so I'll just I'll do that right now since it ties in here. We are by next week we're going to do a final inspection on the project. They got the contractor was fantastic about getting this done in a very timely manner. They're ahead of schedule. We got started a little bit late because some of our permitting stuff got a little bit held up with the land use process. And once we started, excuse me, once the contractor got going, they really got ahead of schedule. So we're doing a final inspection, I believe, next week. And once that's signed off, we open the bathrooms. So the bathrooms will be open, probably close to the end of next week or the beginning of the following, which is way in advance of this event. And then all the construction, most of the construction fencing goes down, and everything gets started to kind of comes back together pretty quick. And then the spray park gets turned on shortly after that as well. So we're going to be good for this. For the purposes of this event, we're going to be fine. The bathrooms will be done.
That's really good news. I did have something nice to say, Scott. And
No, I didn't take that the wrong way. Don't worry.
last time I was at the meeting, I guess I missed the last one. I mentioned that the trees were overhanging the road, and 2 or 3 other people mentioned the same thing. They look great now. So whoever was responsible for that, you or whoever was responsible, passed it along. That
Sure thing,
They
yeah.
did a great job.
Thank you. Yeah,
It
that's
really looks-
compliments to Larry and our maintenance crew. Yeah.
And it was done right away. It was 3 or 4 days later. They're up there, getting the trees taken care of.
Thanks.
So that was good.
Appreciate that.
All right, so I'm thinking that, what do you think, by the end of next week, we should have a decision about what we're doing?
Mhm.
Not sooner? Well, I'll be out of town next week, so unless you guys hear something before then. Any other concerns or comments about the Parks Day? Yeah.
So, if there is going to be a change in whether whether the event goes ahead or whatever, we did put it in the Summer Trail News. It didn't get a huge full page, but
Good point.
and it's on. I think it's up on our website. So we'll need to do a little. We would need to do a little bit of kind of amending that, and it's certainly something we can do. I mean, it's not the first time that something's ever changed, and we can do some information blasts on our website and things like that, and put but
Need to do it
it's
soon.
out there at least somewhat, and we need to just keep that in mind that if it doesn't go ahead, we might need to have at least somebody at the site. I was already planning on working that day anyway, and that kind of thing to kind of reroute people or whatever. So there is that issue.
It's the same day as the farmers market, isn't that correct? There'd be some natural competition or going on between the two?
Did we land on a Saturday or a Sunday? I can't
Saturday.
remember. Okay. Yeah.
That might be a reasonable explanation for any change.
Yeah. And I can help out with that part of, getting some message out that it may have changed or whatever. If we decide to go that direction, I'll help it, get that message out. But just wanted you to be thinking about that
Thank
too.
you.
So.
Okay.
Hopefully we'll find out if he's going to be able to help soon.
Without his truck and all those tools, I think, wow, that would be. And besides, he's really handy. He whipped out his saw and cut the boards to fit, and got them all painted, and it'd be
Yeah.
hard to replace all that in short order.
Yes, it would. All right.
Well, and on a positive note, we have, we have 3 more people, and one of them has already said that she'd like to help. So, and I think were you here, Joyce, a minute ago when we recommended you to be appointed to this committee?
No, I stepped out for that discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so you just may be getting a note from the mayor here pretty soon, and then as soon as you get that, you need to give us a call.
No
Get
pressure
started
there.
right away.
Yeah.
And
It was a- it
we're
was a
going to
close
put you in
vote.
charge of the booth. So anyway, that's the good. The good news is we've got more people coming onto the
As long as I
committee.
can bring my dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we should think about that too. But I think Don will help, and I'll just go visit him at his place of work.
Okay.
So
Sure.
here I come, Don.
Report back soon.
Tracking down.
The stalker. All right, on to item D, which is the designated off-leash area consideration. Thinking that's Scott?
Well, the last time, it seems like it's been so long ago since we had a meeting, but the last discussion, and we had kind of kicked this one down the road a little bit, just to, we had some other issues that needed more time, and then it kind of got held over, and then we missed a couple of meetings. The discussion was that the idea came up, we've been talking about, of course, still working on identifying a permanent dog park site, and we've talked about with some potential future park sites that we've got, maybe incorporating that into one of those sites or something to that effect. And that stuff still has to be worked through, but the idea came up about what about identifying an existing city park that could be designated as an off-leash park without putting in a bunch of amenities, but just saying this park is an off-leash park, and we could allow people to have that opportunity as sort of an interim idea. So it was put back on the agenda again to that was the idea, was to bring this back up again and potentially kick some ideas around, and so I don't know how you want to have that conversation. I think one or two of the PRAC members said, could staff come up with some sites maybe that you could think of that might work? And I've got some ideas, but they're just my ideas, and it's kind of just however you want to move forward with that discussion. or whether you want to still have that discussion since you got a small group tonight, if you want to wait until you've got folks, or just whatever you want to do with that. That's sort of where how we got here.
Well, I would kind of like to hear what your suggestions are.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I'm sure we'll have another month of discussion, but before making
Sure.
any kind of recommendation to the commission.
Well,
but-
so the committee asked staff to at least come up with some ideas that might work, and please just know that these are just kind of brainstorming and thinking of sites that have the ability to not have a great impact on existing uses and some things like that. The first one is the one that actually is why this conversation came up, and I think there was a discussion at a city commission meeting, and I think it might have been when Mike was giving his annual report even,
Yeah, I
or
think so.
something. That's probably where this kind of first kicked up or something, or there was some discussion about something related to this, but Mayor Neely mentioned that the park across the street from him, which is Barkley Park, not Barkley Hills, but Barkley, the one on 12th, could potentially be that type of site because it really is minimally used. It doesn't have any other features built on it. It's not going to affect a playground or something like that. So that was the first one. That one already kind of came up in another conversation, and there were two more sites that we kicked around that seemed to make a little bit of sense, and those are Oak Tree Park, which is basically just the open grass field next to the South End Fire Station on South End Road. That's called Oak Tree Park. It is a park, if you didn't know that. I can't remember exactly what the size of that is. It's less than an acre, but it's just an open area.
It's like
Just a big
150 feet long and
Yeah.
30 feet wide or
Yeah,
something like that.
that's about right. And it gets minimally used for anything else. People just kind of use it as an extension of the fire station. And then the last one that we came up with was potentially Atkinson Park. We've got some other uses there. We've got some other facilities, unlike these other first two sites, but that's another one that came up just because it sort of lends itself to that potential, and but really you could take just about any park in the city and break down, come up with good and bad reasons why you could do this at any site, but those are just kind of starters for conversation purposes, and that's not an exhaustive list by any means. So.
Thank you. Do you guys have any comments or thoughts on those parks? I think I want to go look at them all.
Two of those were on my list too, and so yeah. I mean that's a good
Oak Tree,
idea.
I don't know about.
There's part of me well, first thing I'd like to know, and it seems like it's logical, if we made a decision that we'd like to make a recommendation or advise the commission on this, I think what we need to know is what other process would we have to go through, including neighborhood meetings and that type of thing, if that would be applicable or maybe seen as mandatory. Other than that, I mean, I'm thinking that process out there, whatever that process is, but I'd be willing to push the go button on a couple of these locations personally, and with that in mind, with that whole process in mind, and I don't know what you guys think about that.
What would the issues be around like the Waterboard Park? I've only been up there 2 or 3 times, but it seems like it's underutilized, or I don't know if that would be make any sense. And if we do go ahead with this, do we have to provide security fencing? You have to fence off certain areas, or just have it wide open?
Well,
we talked one time in here about sections would have to have some kind of fencing, if I remember that correctly.
Yeah. There's no exact answer here, but these are what kind of my thoughts are, and also what the committee has discussed previously. The long-term permanent dog park is we want to design that with those types of things, with with fencing, with some control features, with amenities potentially, water source and some different things, and some amenities for the people, maybe a shelter area, some tables, whatever. Some of those things that you see in dog parks. This other idea that we're talking about, that sort of is the between now and whenever that other thing happens, is I think we were just talking about just taking some park site in whatever form it exists in, whether it does or doesn't have any fencing or anything like that, and just designating that this is a site that we're exempting from our park rules about leashes. And we're just telling the community this is an option for you. And it's a use it at your own risk, that kind of a thing, and that type of thing. And we'd put up some signage that says, this is designated an off-leash site, so that the non-dog owners that might use that site would be aware of that, that they're coming into this site knowing that this is a designated off-leash park. So I think the idea, Bob, was to do this, that it wouldn't be a cost factor. We wouldn't have to go through a design process. We wouldn't have to go through a land use process to change a use. We're basically what we're doing is we'd be going, if this idea went forward and you came up with a recommendation, and that recommendation would go back to the city commission, and they would basically be approving an exemption of a park rule. Our park rules are clear that you have to have your dogs on leash in parks. Now, enforcement is another issue because not everybody follows that rule, and we don't have a very good ability to enforce that, unfortunately. But that is a park rule, and we would have to exempt that. So that's the idea. It's just taking one site and saying we're exempting this from the leash rule. That's kind of to boil it down to simplicity, without making changes to the site other than maybe some signage.
Has anybody checked on liability insurance?
Well, we haven't gotten that far. We would go to our insurance company and talk to them about this if it goes forward, and make sure before we did anything permanent. In Oregon, you have immunity in parks so long as you're not negligent in you don't have a big hole or a big piece of metal sticking out that you just ignored or something. Yeah, we have what's called recreational immunity in parks in Oregon, which exempts public parks from being easily sued for basically because people want to use them, and so there's not a huge liability concern. Practicality of is this a safe thing to do? Is this a good idea? We certainly want to consider that. I mean, but also people do all kinds of things in parks knowing that they're assuming risk doing that. So, but that's a consideration, and if we got to a recommendation, we'd want to make sure we take that to our company and say, is this a problem? I'm guessing it's not.
Any other questions?
Just the one other, and would it be prudent or necessary to bring this before the community, the neighborhood association that has this park within its boundaries, or would it be more like an informational thing, like you just said? Now this park is now an off-leash dog park.
Probably a good idea to go to the neighborhood association. It's not required, but that's a good practice, and our neighborhood associations are very active and very involved and very interested in what goes on, and I think they would appreciate that. So if you came up with a recommendation of a site, we would probably want to go to that neighborhood and just meet with them and just explain what we're doing, and are there any big concerns about that, and that kind of thing.
I think so.
Oh, Sean. Comments? Questions?
One thing I'm surprised that hasn't been said here, about a year and a half ago I sat in a large circle here with about 25 people, and that's the first time I met Don. And he was the PRAC representative for a Friends of Oregon City Dog Parks type of a group. And because we live on a park, I was very curious. And a lot of people were talking very large scale financially, what should this take? And I tried and attempted to bring the group back down and say, first, where are dogs being let off leash right now? What are some of those areas? what can be done low cost. So I think this is a great idea. But one place that, again, I keep not hearing about is the 3 acres on the far end of Wesley Lynn Park that's not developed. It doesn't have a master plan. The ground has never been tilled up or replanted, and simple signage on 4 sides of that saying this is a designated area would make sense. And a real pro there is you also have a park host that can monitor the situation and provide feedback. So that's something that I would want you guys to consider.
That's a good idea.
So I recommend that we take this information that we talked about today and try to move forward with it by the next time we meet. Okay, so that we all come we all come back and have an opinion and have thought about it. And certainly, I don't think there's I mean, there probably is a limitation, but I mean, if there were 2 parks that we recommended for this, I don't think that would be a bad thing, 1 or 2. And it would just be, we could make that give that advice to the commission.
So we all have an assignment for next
Yes,
good
month.
idea.
we have.
And yes,
Yeah.
keep that in. As do you.
Let's try to move.
Good idea.
Let the record show
Please.
we're going to try our level best to move forward on that on the next meeting.
You got 2 stars by it.
Yeah, 2 stars. That way we'll get some time to think about it.
Good. And maybe go visit those sites that we just talked about. All right, Clackamas Park entry sign.
Actually, I'm going to switch places here so I can look at my. So on the, unfortunately, I didn't think about getting this up on the screen for the public that may be viewing, so I apologize for that. The members in the audience here that are potential PrAC members want to see this. I can share it. I can also send this to you guys so you're up to speed on it. So if you can get that entry sign document open, basically what, as you know, somewhat recently we put it's called the Ripple Effect art sculpture in at the entry to Clackamas Park. And this is kind of part of a whole bigger thing. The Ripple Effect is something that is, it's the idea is connecting through art the river, people to the river, and we're trying to bring that into some other things as well. But also, what this has basically done is given us the opportunity to redo the entrance to Clackamas and really make it a nicer entrance. Can you hear me? If I do what now?
Put it on this one here. I can show you.
Okay. Pardon me for just a second here. We're going to make this viewable after all. Here we go. Thanks.
Here, I'm gonna push this button here and see if Scott recognizes me.
This is just going to be broadcast, so actually it's not going to be on here. I'm going to sit here, though, so I can scroll through this and show the other pictures. So anyway, we're taking the opportunity to redo the entry. What has happened is that our existing sign at Clackamas is now blocking that art sculpture, and we need to remove that and redo it. And it's kind of an aged sign anyway, and we'd like to kind of update that. So what you're looking at here is just a schematic that's been done by the same artist that did the sculpture. And the idea is to do an entry piece that would be very consistent with the ripple effect, using the same types of materials, which is salvaged materials, salvaged metals, and I think you can see some of the things that were used on the art piece on the rock there. And if you scroll down, there's actually some different views of this rendering. So as you scroll down, there'll be a close-up of that, the arch that says Clackamas Park. So you're looking at basically the use of some existing pipe that would be taken from some of the old pilings that we had at the boat ramp at Clackamas. And then if you scroll down even further, it's an even closer view of the materials and kind of what it looks like. So this is the proposed idea. What we wanted to do is bring this to the committee and just see if you had any feedback on that, comments. We'd like to do this summer. We've got some funding figured out. We're going to try to work with it's the same sculptor, Ben Dye, who did the artwork that has given us this proposal, and we think we can do this at a pretty cost-effective rate and have something that really goes well with the piece, and it complements it, and it lets the new artwork really be shown. So it's a little bit of a crude rendering. It's going to obviously look much better than the rendering, but that just gives you an idea of what we're looking at.
Is that the same cable? The going through the letters?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, those were the salvage cables that we pulled out. They were pulled out of the river and over by the cove. So it's got some really cool, connections to that. Yeah. So I guess just looking for your, thoughts, feedback, and hopefully you like it. And
Just don't forget there's 2 T's.
not say that on there.
No, I'm just saying.
Yes, okay. I was going, uh-oh, did we? Great.
There. I think it looks great.
Thank you.
All right, now I gotta go back to the agenda. That piece really does look nice down there, I have to say. I like it. That brings me to a question that's a little bit unrelated. The sculpture that's in the park at Carnegie in front of the library that now has the big sign on it that says "Do not climb." Is that permanent, or is that just on display? It's not permanent?
Yeah, the artwork
Okay.
is not permanent.
Hence the sign that says "Do not climb."
Yeah.
Okay, just curious, because I know this piece was designed with the intent that it could be climbed on,
Yeah.
and and I thought, why did we?
Yeah, those are
Why did
just
we put
it's
something that's
a
not-
temporary display for the time being.
Okay.
Correct, yeah.
All right. Other general business, Scott again.
I don't have anything else for you.
All right. Anybody else have any general business? No?
Nope.
Okay, member reports. Shall we start with Adam? Anything to report this month? Nope.
I have nothing. Still new, so
Okay.
still learning.
Right.
I don't really have anything. I could make up something, but something about the pool because I'm there every day.
Yeah, you are there.
Mhm.
Well, I just want, actually, Bob, why don't you go ahead? Go first.
Well, I think my report was taking care of my concerns about August 10th, and I feel a lot better now because we have nice restrooms to use, and we have a new volunteer that's going to have legions of people to help. And I think somebody even volunteered her to take care of all the food.
Wow.
So, and the trees are cut, so that's that was going to be my report, but that's taken care of. But thank you.
Nice, yes, thank you. I just wanted to comment on, I've been walking around the cove and over across to Gladstone and the bridge and back, and I am absolutely impressed with the amount of people that I have been seeing on that trail, biking, walking, swimmers in the cove. There must have been 100 swimmers down there one day when I was on a walk, and I know we just had a triathlon, last weekend?
Last weekend.
Yeah. So there's some really great things happening around here, and I'm just really impressed with all the people that are out. I love this nice weather, and people are out and about and on the street.
Downtown Oregon
and-
City is happening too.
Yeah, it's great.
I can report a little on the triathlon. There was
Okay.
we hosted at First City Cycles, so we're one of the main sponsors, and I believe it was 280 registered participants for a first year
Wow.
triathlon. It's huge. They were expecting 150 at first, so next year they are expecting 400 registered participants. Patrick Bolin, who ran that whole thing, really great guy, and he led Wednesday swims down at the Cove, and great things like that. So I think it's going to be a great, not only a highlight point of that park and that great Clackamas River Trail and that whole Cove area, but a big boon for Oregon City in the future as well. So went off without a hitch except for the rain. It was beautiful sunshine up until the day of the race, and then just dumped on them. So other than that, it was great.
Thank you.
And I was just going to add on the, since you mentioned the cove and the swimmers, actually just as a kind of a little anecdote to that or whatever, it is being used a lot more, the cove, the actual body of water, for what's called open water swimming, which is, just outdoor longer distance swimming. It's becoming quite an organized effort, and I think you mentioned you saw a bunch of people. There are something like 40 people that show up on a weekly or
On
a couple
Wednesday
times a
nights, I
week.
believe,
Yeah,
yeah.
Wednesday nights. So tonight, and who was it that said? Was that you, Joyce? That said that? I was talking to somebody. Oh no, it was our
Melanie?
person running the cameras back
Melody?
here. Had seen the folks swimming because she was filming them for the Willamette Falls Television as just something for that. And but yeah, so the numbers are increasing, and it's becoming used a lot more for that that type of use. And there's actually an effort by some of those participants to form a Friends of the Cove group. And so you might be seeing or hearing more about that, and you're certainly probably going to hear more about the use of that for that swimming. I guess it's it's a very unique. It's a unique thing within the metropolitan area to have that open body of water, and what is really good about it is that the water is constantly cycling through. It's not a stagnant body. It's calm, but it isn't stagnant. Because it is connected to the river and it gets circulated. So versus in a lake where you've got some
It's
stagnant
fairly
water.
warm for being a circulated
Yeah,
body
exactly,
of water. It's
yeah.
fairly warm, and that's what they've all told us at the shop today, and that's like the big factor.
So the
we're
word
gonna
is
have to-
out, and there's a group it's informal at the moment, but they're trying to be more formal and maybe become an official, nonprofit organization or something. And there's some tie-ins to what we do with the recreation side of things, but there's also the consideration of whatever may happen with development there eventually. But it's going to remain available for public use and public recreation, whatever develops there. So, kind of it's a good observation because
Yeah, and in 2011, I started the Tankers, the master swimming team, and we do in our flyer list the cove as a part of our open water swimming. So
thought
since
maybe it-
2011.
Nice. Got your wetsuit?
Yeah.
That's good. Or dry suit? What are they called?
Both.
Okay.
Layered.
All right. Staff reports.
Okay, got a few things for you real quick. The RV park veterans fee waiver policy update. This is just kind of closing the loop because you had worked on this and made a recommendation and supported the recommendation that came forward and eventually did get passed by the commission. And so we now have a policy in place that we accept the Oregon State Parks disabled veterans pass at the RV park, and there's some limits on that. I think I won't go back through the details. If you want those, I can bring those back to you, but there's some limitations on number of days and that type of thing, but we have adopted that policy. It's in place. We're just beginning to put some information on our website and down at the park, and as we do RV park upgrades, we'll probably make with the new kiosk that's going in, we're going to put up new signage, so we'll probably have the ability to highlight that better and that kind of thing. So just bringing that back to let you know that we've come full circle on that, and that's in place. I was just talking about the ripple effect piece at Clackamet at the entry. The next installment of the ripple effect art projects are the Clackamas County Arts Alliance is working on, and they're working with Oregon City as one of the three cities. Oregon City, West Linn, and Milwaukee are doing the ripple effect bike rack art pieces, and they've already commissioned an artist, and the artist that was selected just happens to be Ben Dye, who was the same that did the other ripple effect piece. It was a very competitive process, but he rose to the top again on that. So we'll be working with them, and we're going to be the recipients of basically at no cost to us, or at very limited cost to us, of at least one or more really cool bike racks that will go into one of our sites. The two sites that we're looking at are the end of the Oregon Trail and Clackamet, and so we're kind of working with the committee. Denise Kai and I are on the committee to sort of help guide that process, and we'll be bringing back some additional reports. But this is if you go on and Google like bike rack art, you'll see some really incredible things. And we don't have a huge budget. It's a small grant that the Arts Alliance got for this, but within the budget, I think we're going to do something really cool. But you go on and look at some bike rack art online, and you'll see some really cool, innovative things. That the idea is that it doesn't really look like a bike rack, but it is one.
Mm-hmm.
Got a bike expert here. He could probably tell you more than I can tell you about that. But
I've heard a couple things about some of the things that they talked about. Making it very artsy but functional was the key.
Yep.
They asked us at the shop a little advice about it, and that was what we said is to make it functional. It's cool to make it really funky and really awesome looking, but when you can't lock but 2 bikes to it, it's not going to make any sense. So that was the few points weak, yeah. But some of the plans that I saw looked really cool. So I'm looking forward to seeing how those develop and where they go.
the next thing I have is the end of the Oregon Trail celebration and concert on the green. I put at your place a little flyer thingy that is it's a little I don't know, like almost looks like a trifold, but it's just a one side thing piece of information. We've also got that in the trail news, and there's some posters that are going around, and it's on our website. So we're putting the word out, but this is the big event, one of the really big events this summer. It's on Friday, July 26th at the end of the Oregon Trail site, and there really are 2 purposes. One is that we are hosting and welcoming somewhere around 300 visitors from all over the United States for the Oregon California Trails Association that will be holding its annual conference around the Oregon City area that same week. Friday night will be sort of their finale event, and we'll be rolling out the red carpet and being good hosts for them and saying, welcome to Oregon City, welcome to the end of the Oregon Trail, and that kind of thing. And secondly, it's to celebrate the end of the Oregon Trail site with our community and invite, our community is invited, and we think we're going to have a great event. All the information's on your flyer, but basically it starts at 6 o'clock and it goes until about 10:30. We're going to have local, regional, and national musicians. We have the #1 Elvis impersonator in the United States coming to that event. He was on David Letterman somewhat recently, and I mean this is a big deal. It's not a hokey thing. It's a really a legitimate
former
thing.
PRAC member
And Ray Gordon.
Ray Gordon,
well-known local musician. She's phenomenal, and then also Carrie Cunningham and the Six Shooters, kind of a Pacific Northwest touring contemporary country artist, and they are very good as well. So that should be a lot of fun, and we're going to have kids activities and balloon artists and fun things for everybody, and food and drink and just all kinds of fun. So it's going to be a really fun evening, I think. So
Cool.
hopefully you'll all be able to come, and our whole community is of course invited to attend.
Scott,
Yes, sir.
what is our role, if any, in that event?
Whatever you want it to be, really. If you want to put out an information booth that we've been talking about, with kind of educating the community about what Parks is about, we can accommodate that. It's an end of the Oregon Trail kind of experience for everybody, and and the Interpretive Center is going to be open with tours and that kind of thing too. So I forgot to mention that. But mostly just come and enjoy yourself and be part of the festivity. But if you want to put up and work with me on putting up the information booth for that, we can do that. Yeah, I was actually going to mention that to you, and I forgot to do that. But I think, did we mention that before, that was one of the opportunities? Yeah. Okay.
This is, I believe, the same weekend as the first city celebration on
Yeah.
Main Street. Was that intentional?
Well,
somewhat. And if we do have a presence, maybe the presence would be at the first city celebration, pushing people down to the Interpretive Center. Maybe that would be an
so
idea.
this is on Friday night. My understanding is the first city celebration is on Saturday. Is there a Friday?
It kind of starts kicking off Friday,
Yeah.
goes through Saturday, Sunday.
I thought it was mostly on the weekend, but the thing about this was the date wasn't selected by the city per se. It was it coincides with this OCTA convention, the Oregon
Right.
California Trail. So they've had this date in place for a couple of years. That this was the conference that was going to be in Oregon, and so it was kind of, the date was what it was for us. So we were, we're working with that, but we're definitely not trying to draw people away from the other event. And we're just doing Friday night only, and that's it. And hopefully that won't interfere or cause too much.
I think it all works for the same team.
Yeah, it
really.
is. It's a
all
community.
part of the same plan. So.
Yeah, but that's a good question. So, any other questions about the event? Couple of other things. And so, speaking of the end of the Oregon Trail, and this also coincides, the celebration also coincides with the fact that the Clackamas Heritage Partners have been working with the city for the last year and a half on sort of reopening the programming elements of the interpretive center. And I know we've talked about this before at the PRAC meetings, but everything is still continuing to move forward. The plan right now is about mid-July, the CHP, with its agreement with the city and working with the grant funds and all they've been working with the partnership, that they are going to begin sort of kind of having a soft reopening of some of the interpretive center elements around the middle of July, and then kind of easing into that and seeing how that goes. So we're continuing to work with them on that. If you have any specific questions, I'd be happy to answer that. Let's see. The recreation report I put at your places, so the monthly report is there. If you have any questions, there's gobs of information about how many people attended what events and swim lessons and so on and so forth, and things at the Pioneer Center and all that good stuff. We are in the midst of our summer season kicked off, and things are going really well. We've got waiting lists for our swim lessons. We've got various camps going on and activities and all kinds of good stuff. So things are off to a really good start for our summer program. And the concerts in the park start on July 11th. That'll be our first one. We kick off the summer season and go until basically the last part of August with our summer concert series. And then last thing is, if you haven't already heard this, but there is a connection here to the park stuff, and that is the city commission at their meeting last week made a formal decision about selecting the existing Carnegie Library Park as the site for the site for the city's library. We're there right now, but it was a temporary being there. But they have determined that the city commission has said that's the site we want. The library board has been working on this for a while, and they recommended to the commission, who basically adopted that would be the site that they want to do that. So last Wednesday's meeting, there was a really nice presentation given by the library director, Maureen Cole, and some library board members, and then an architect that worked on some schematic plans that were just basically nothing has been decided, but just to give a visual of what it might look like to expand the existing Carnegie building. And if you're interested in that at all, you can go back to the video from last Wednesday and look at that. But that was decided on last week by the commission. Now, this is a process that's going to go through a lot of public involvement, and be a lot of discussion about that. And there are definitely going to be some impacts on the park. We're going to lose some of the park space as that goes forward, but going to retain the playground and the spray park and that kind of thing. Mostly, it looks like we'll be losing the space behind the Carnegie building, which is just mentioned the concerts in the park, and so that's going to have an impact on that. And we're going to be thinking about some alternative planning on that, and we've got some ideas. I'll save that for another day. I don't want to lengthen the discussion here, but we're going to have to look at some alternative sites, and it's definitely, we're not going to discontinue the summer concerts in the park. Yes, sir.
Aren't there some restrictions on what changes can be made to the Carnegie building because it's in the historical register or something?
That's all been investigated preliminarily, and as I understand it, it can be done. I mean, it's going to have to be done well, but it can be done. And the original Carnegie building was actually built when Andrew Carnegie gave the money for all the Carnegie libraries across the United States. one of the conditions of giving money to communities for the Carnegie libraries was that they had to be designed, and we just celebrated the 100th year anniversary of the Carnegie Library in Oregon City last Saturday. We had a really nice event down there. Was that it had to be done with the ability to expand the existing building. It's a really interesting clause with, it's a 100-year-old clause at this point, but so it's doable. It has to be done within the parameters of those historic conditions. I understand what you're asking.
Now, you're too young to know this, but years ago there was an election for a new library, and Oregon had just passed the major majority. In other words, more than half the people had to vote on a bond issue, and then 51% had to approve it.
Yeah, the double majority rule.
Double majority rule. Well, we got half of that passed, but the other half didn't. But one of the reasons for the new building was because we couldn't make changes to the old Carnegie building. And so my wife, who was on the library board at the time, reminded me of that. And so I just thought I'd mention that, although I'm sure that it's past all the legal hurdles.
Right. There's definitely the research is being done. I mean, there's going to be a lot of discussion, a lot of public input and discussion. But I think that the city believes that it can do that. Yeah. Let's see. That's it. That's all I had for my report.
Anything else from anyone? Well, we're about
Good
an hour
meeting.
late, but our next meeting is scheduled for July 25th, which is the day before the event at the end of the Oregon Trail. That'll be a busy day, a busy week.
Well.
All right, our meeting is adjourned.
Great. Good job, Lisa.